Okay. Like I said, as a circular piece, whether you use a template, just trying to get your practice with all of your dimensional drawing. As a globe or as trying to fill this out, you can see the reflection. So if I put a straight vertical line, everything around it from the top to the bottom, just like a north to south globe, longitude and latitude. I'm just setting it on there, crossing it in there, just roughly sketching that in there. So at least you can see that even as a wire-framed illustration, these would all be succumbed to putting it together. The part where it has the hanger on it is a cylinder that's making an elliptical shape, which actually curves, and that's the part that sticks out. So I'm going to exaggerate just slightly. And then again, here's the two widths. If you started out with the width first, and then put the elliptical shape on that, and again, if you could repeat it, it's going to be the easiest one to get. The part that you see up here is reflective. Sometimes it has ridges on it on the base. And like I said, this is just a giant model of it. So just kind of dividing it there just to help with the shading. And then there's an actual elliptical shape going the other direction. So I'm just filling that piece in. Okay. Now the overall values, I'm going to worry about the reflection last and try to go back. It's just like a basic illustration piece. The elliptical piece on here touches the water, the surface, but it actually goes back to get the back of the ellipse, so that's where that reflection. It's not going to be too much wider than the actual piece. So I'm just going to lightly sketch that in, acting as a reflective piece. There's the section. So since it's reflective, there's really hard to see a clean cast shadow, but I'm just sketching it in lightly just so you can see the, maybe you can't see it, there you go, physics. Now for the highlight, you can see this ridge that comes off the top, and we'll try doing this as well. So I'm just going to start to block in the values. As long as it fits there, it's going to be overlapping itself with shading, so it's not going to hurt it. And the metal part that does the connectivity to it is going to curve and wrap around. The part that's silver, call these lines coming across as more of what they call a posterization. So it goes from a dark gradient, if you think of it like the computer talk, and some highlights. The highlights are showing what's reflective around it. In this case, the cityscape is reflecting into it just as well as the piece. And then you have these serrated parts, which are going to be larger at the beginning. As it wraps around, they get closer together. Building that piece together. The part that has this loop, I've already shaded it in, but I'm just going to find a dark value so that it's offset, like that. If I drew it with just a line, I'll sketch it right next to it. If you can imagine that piece straddling the shading, so it's going to give it a little bit more of a illustration. That little highlight right there, that lack of light coming through gives it a little bit more of an illusion of depth. Now the buildings, they're going to wrap for this checkerboard that's been transposed onto this. You can actually go in and follow along. If it goes with that line, it's going to help the shading of it. You can kind of see parallel lines that are kind of showing a building with all their windows. And a little bit larger here. And a couple of highlights as it comes through. And the overall value of this actual ornament is not, there's not a lot of pure white to it, even though it's got the highlights, so you kind of have to work around it. And there's actually a gradient that comes through this. So I'm just kind of letting it be dark up against the reflective highlight up here. And now when I go to the top of this, I might use the template eventually here, but just to show it to you. Again, if you have different leads, as I hear a couple of a harder lead, once it's soft, the hard lead lets you push a lot harder. Not because it's harder, but just because it gives a little bit more of a blending effect. Starts to build that up. And if you really look closer, even if you, like I said, if you zoom in to your reference file, you can see a lot more opportunity. Just let me show you, if you did use the template, which you're welcome to, you can see, I can find one that's pretty accurate to it. Not a lot. Might go just a little bit bigger. And that allows me just to, it's kind of nice because you can draw right around it without having to worry. Put a little bit of tone in there. So it's gone from a H to an HP. Let me build that up. You can see the other line of buildings on the opposite side. Bring that in there. And I'll lose a little bit of that edge, but I'm going to come down to with the reflection and just use the same. Same idea. And this part has some reflection to it. You can kind of see that part. Okay, so once it's there, you can just work it around and trying to get just a little bit more of the tone. Sketch. The highlights kind of showing up down low because the sun's just coming out. You have a little bit of this section here to smear it in if you want. So it's once you get the linear part, as always, you start to put it together with all the values. And then you can pick it out with any of the highlights with your eraser. So here I'm going in there just to get that lighting in there real good. Go back and clean up the edge, get it nice and sharp.